say, gosh, dude, what is love?
What is love? Gosh, it's a weird question.
Oh no. Love?
Wow.
Can I skip?
I'm speechless.
The first thing that comes to my head, ice cream.
Love. Nat King Cole did it the best, love.
Love is for the win.
O as onomatopoeia or something like that.
Baby, don't hurt me.
I guess I'd have to say, I think love is a commitment.
Some of the sweetest of emotions.
Love is never ending.
Love is when you know that someone is there for you.
Ooh. Forgiveness.
Love is unconditional.
Love is selflessness.
I'd say more than like a really strong emotion. It's just like the ultimate in trust.
What love is deeply connected in intimacy.
Caring about somebody more than you care about anything else, and wanting the best for that person more than you've ever wanted it for anything else.
Love to me is being unrelentless, doing whatever it takes.
Love is the final product of a lot of different parts of a relationship.
Love is compassion.
Love is sacrifice.
Love is a choice. And I think it's great when it's a feeling, but I think it's a decision and a choice.
Imagine if you and I were having a conversation, and I ask you that question: what is love? How would you answer that? How would you begin to describe love, or even begin to define love? It's an important question. And arguably, this question, what is love, has been talked about all throughout human history. And what's fascinating to think about is you just think about this question, is it's one of the most perplexing questions because there's so many different opinions. The opinions of the old and the opinions of the new about what is love. For example, one of the greatest thinkers and philosophers of all time was Aristotle. And Aristotle lived about 300 years before Jesus came into the world. And Aristotle actually answered this question, and he said, when it comes to love, love is composed of a single soul inhabiting two bodies. Now that's deep, isn't it? I mean, that'll make you think what's he saying there? That's just a great statement. And then not only of kind of, the ancients and what they thought, and the ancient philosophers, but today we have some modern day philosophers. In fact, there's one philosopher that has had a tremendous impact on our culture over the last 50 years. Perhaps she has had an impact on your life, and her name is Dolly Parton. You guys know her? And Dolly Parton actually answered this question, and here's what she said: love is something sent from heaven to worry the hell out of you. I think that is spot on. I mean, it's paradoxical, isn't it? It's like on one hand, you so want it and you love it, but on the other hand, man, it can be painful. And that's love. What is love? But perhaps the greatest, answer to this question of what is love is really captured in one of my all-time favorite movies. And there's this scene in this movie that I just think answers this question well. Take a look.
I love you. You complete me. And I just had...
Shut up. Just shut up. You had me at hello. You had me at hello.
Jerry Maguire, baby, can't you just feel the love in that scene? I mean, it's just right there. You had me at hello. And my point with all of that is I think if we're all sitting down together and we're all trying to answer this question, like, what is love? What is love? We're just all going to have a lot of opinions. It's one of the most perplexing questions to ask, what is love? And I would say it's not only perplexing, but I think this is an important question. I think today's discussion we're going to have is very important. And the reason why is because, honestly, regardless if you're a Christian or not, I think every single one of us, we're honestly looking for it. I mean, we want to experience love. It's why we do the things we do. It's why we spend the energy and money and resources on ourselves, because we want to look in the mirror and we want to love what we see. We want to experience love in that moment, love of ourselves, and then we want to go out in our culture and with friends and family and people, and we want to do things and spend all this energy so we can experience love on the other side of us. I mean, this is really why we date, because we're looking for love. And it's why we're willing to, do these online dating sites, or it's why we're willing to go on these blind dates that are kind of risky and, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Because honestly, isn't the truth that we're really looking for love? And this is also why we're willing to risk something that's so painful, which is heartbreak or heartache. I mean, if you've ever experienced deep relational heartache, you know what I'm talking about. But we're willing to put that out there. We're willing to risk something big in our lives. Why? Because we're looking for love. We want to experience it. And this is ultimately why we get married. Because one of the reasons we get married is because, hey, I think I can love you for the rest of my life, and I think you can love me the rest of my life. I think regardless if you're a Christian or not, if we're honest, I think every single one of us would say, yeah, I'm looking for love. I'm looking for that love relationship. Which brings us to another question, which is this: what does love look like? I mean, if love is perplexing, then what does it look like in a love relationship? Or think about it this way. Imagine this. Imagine you and I, could look at two distinct relationships. And they're two distinct marriage relationships. And this distinct marriage relationship over here, it just exudes love. It's vibrant. It's authentic. There's connection. It is awesome and sexy. And we look at this marriage relationship and we're like, wow. And imagine just making that observation. And then we look at another marriage relationship, and this marriage relationship is absent of love in every respect. And the question then becomes, if you and I were just thinking, and we saw these two relationships, well, what's the difference? What makes this so vibrant and so full of love, and what makes this marriage relationship just so empty of love? Is there any handles we can hold on? Is there any research that actually quantifies this and gives us some insight into what's happening here? Well, the good news is there actually is. In fact, there's an individual by the name of Dr. Cheryl Fraser. And she's a psychologist, she's been on the other side for decades and decades and decades of married couples and romantic relationships. And she has some research out that says there are distinctives, there are very specific things you will see in a very healthy love relationship and in a relationship absent of love. And so if you're here today, because I want to share this with you, and you're single, or maybe you are in a dating relationship, or maybe one day you love to be in a dating relationship, what I'm going to share with you is so insightful because it gives you kind of that next phase in your relationship, what to look forward to. What is it that leads to this healthy love relationship? And here's what she says. She says there are three very specific things that lead I'll just kick that over there, to healthy relationships. She says the first thing is intimacy. And intimacy, when you think about intimacy, intimacy is that kind of psychological, emotional connection. Intimacy is that, like, hey, I have your back, you have my back. Intimacy is, hey, we can work problems together. There's enough self-awareness in this. We can apologize to one another. This is that deep level of trust, that deep connection. I'm for you and you're for me. That friendship, that's intimacy. That's one area. She said the second component is called thrill. And thrill is a little bit harder to quantify. But the way to think about thrill is this. You remember when you met him or you met her? You remember when she walked into the room that very first time, or into that restaurant, or into school, or into your office, where you're at, and you saw her? And you had those feelings of nerves. You had those butterflies. You were like, oh my gosh, like, look at her. She's stunning, or look at him. You remember that, just kind of that connection and that authentic attraction where they were your laser focus and there was no one else on the planet you'd rather be with? That's thrill. She says that's the second component. And then she says the third component of a healthy love relationship is sensuality. And sensuality is beyond the sexual realm. I mean, this is basically but it's just beyond this. It covers all five senses. I mean, it's hearing and sight and smell and taste and touch, all your senses. And sensuality is when you go on a walk in the park and you just hold hands and you're just there with her or with him. Sensuality is the idea that just that quick goodbye kiss or perhaps that deep, passionate kiss. Sensuality covers everything under the sexual realm. And what she calls these three things, is she calls this, which I think is a great name, she says this is called the passion triangle. And she says, when all three of these things are balanced, in other words, when you and I are intentional in our romantic love relationships, in our marriage relationships, when we're intentional, which Jordan talked about the last couple weeks of this series, when we're intentional and we bring balance to the passion triangle, it's the very thing that leads to this vibrant, sexy relationship that just exudes love. But here's what happens. As she goes further into her research, she says what happens is, you get married, and these were predominantly married couples she's talking about. You get married, and then time happens. And over time, we can get unbalanced. And when you and I begin to be unbalanced, perhaps on intimacy or thrill or sensuality, she says eventually it leads to what she calls, and I love this term, marriage incorporated. And marriage incorporated is when your marriage feels like a business, when your marriage feels like it's been incorporated. And typically in marriage incorporated, you're fairly strong in intimacy. In other words, you're doing life together. Like you've got one another's back. Hey, we're raising kids together. We're giving each other high fives as you're taking one kid here and I'm taking, the other kid there. I mean, we're paying bills. We're building a little bit of equity. We're going on vacation, creating some memories. I mean, we're together and we can apologize and own things. I mean, there's some intimacy there. But when it comes to thrill, perhaps the dog is more excited to see you than me, right? Now, don't take that illustration too far because I think even a madly crazy in love person would never go up and down the stairs and jump on her leg. And, I just don't think that works. But you kind of get the point. I mean, when he or she comes in, the response used to be something different. But now, because this is unbalanced, the response may be, hey. Or the response may be, what's for dinner? Or the response may be, nothing. And when thrill is unbalanced, sensuality begins to take a back seat. And guys, this unbalance can happen a lot of different ways. I mean, there are marriage relationships that, man, they're strong in thrill and sensuality. It's always about the next thrill, always about the next vacation, always about the next experience. Hey, can we keep this high, intentional here? And it's all about the sex. But is there really any deep emotional connection? Is there really any passionate, discovery of one another? Perhaps that's unbalanced. And I'm telling you, however you figure this, when these get unbalanced, eventually, over time, if they stay unbalanced long enough, we begin to say things like this. We say, well, they don't do it for me any longer. She's just not doing it for me. I mean, she used to, he used to, but they're not doing it for me any longer. Or we begin to say things like this, I'm just not happy. I mean, there was a day but I'm just in this relationship. I'm not happy. And I only have so many years to live. I mean, come on, I want to be happy. Or we say, I guess he or she wasn't the right person. I thought she was. I thought he was. But now that we've gotten to know one another and done some life, and we're good friends. We're good friends. But I just don't think they're the right person. Or we say, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I've lost that love and feeling. And I just don't think I'm in love with you any longer. Now, if you've ever thought that or felt that, then I just want you to, or potentially you could think that, I just want you to lean in. And I want to say something to you, and I want to be very careful the way I say this, because I'm not trying to be cavalier, and I'm not trying to be dismissive. But listen, when it comes to those expressions and feelings and thoughts, did you know in your relationship, and I know there are exceptions to this, but do you know in the majority of our relationships, it doesn't have to be that way. There is something every single one of us can do, regardless if you are a Christian or not. there is something we can all do to begin to reignite and bring balance back to the passion triangle. And it's one word, and the thing every single one of us are capable and can do is love. Is love. Which brings us full circle back to our initial question. Well, then, what is it? If that's what's going to ultimately bring balance back to sensuality, thrill, and intimacy, and give me the very thing that I so desire, which is a healthy love relationship, and it's love, it's so perplexing. What is love? So guys, here's the really good news. Over the next 2 weeks, for the rest of our time today, and next week, this is what we're going to talk about. And at the end of these 2 weeks, we're going to get to the bottom of this question. And we're going to actually have a foundation, some handles, practical, helpful things to begin to answer this question of what is love. And if we're willing to choose and lean into what we're going to talk about over the next couple days, I'm telling you, I've seen it in my relationship and relationships on the other side of me. It's what fuels, it what brings balance back to the passion triangle. So, what is love? How do we begin to even, discuss this? Well, what's really cool is that 2,000 years ago, there was a man by the name of Paul who actually answered this question. And Paul in the first century, he was a first century follower of Jesus. He's got a wonderful story. I wish I had time to tell you his whole story because it's just fascinating. It's so adventurous. And so Paul was a first century follower of Jesus. He wrote about half the New Testament, or just over half the New Testament. And in one of his letters called Corinthians, he answers this question. And the letter of Corinthians was actually written to a group of people in a city called Corinth. And the city of Corinth was a really fascinating city. The powerful, the bold, the beautiful, the rich, the famous, they lived in the city of Corinth. And these individuals were becoming followers of Jesus Christ, and now they had questions. And they were like, what does it look like to be a follower of Christ now? I previously wasn't, and I made a lot of choices relationally, morally, whatever it is, and now I'm a follower of Jesus. So, Paul, what does it look like now? And they were also struggling immensely in their relationships. There was all this disunity and all this kind of absence of love and all this kind of stuff. And so Paul writes a letter and says, okay, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what the key is. And he says it's love. It's love to bring unity back. It's love that reignites. It's love. And then naturally the Corinthians go, what is it? What is love? And he says, I'll tell you. Love is. Now, what's so important here is that this is not Paul's opinion. See right here, if I'm sitting where you're sitting, immediately my internal lawyer goes off, and I'm like, oh, okay. Is this Paul, you're just going to give me another stinking opinion? Because I've got Aristotle's opinion, I've got all kinds of opinions, I've got Dolly's opinion. Like, where are you pulling this from? Is this the way your mama loved you? Is this the way that bad relationship went that, didn't work out, and now that defined your love? What's your foundation of love, Paul? What's so important to understand, this is not Paul's opinion. What Paul is pulling from, it's Jesus Christ, because Paul is a follower of Jesus, and Jesus is a personification of love, and he remembers that Jesus gave one command. As a follower of Jesus Christ, everything hinges on this one command, not 613 laws, not the 10 commandments. No, it's the one command Jesus gave his followers, and Paul's thinking of this, and Paul said, oh yeah, the one command. This is it. This is the one I can't get wrong. Love, Jesus says, as I have loved you. And Paul's thinking about that. I've had all these experiences, perhaps he was thinking, but here's the way Jesus loved me. And as he thinks about the way Jesus loved and called us to love as he has loved, he goes, okay, love is patient. Love is patient, which means, practically speaking, love isn't pushy. Love doesn't push you to do something you're not comfortable to do. Love doesn't push you in that dating relationship. In that conversation maybe you're having on the first or second date and it just push, tell me. No, love is patient. Or maybe think about it this way. Love is a choice to move at the other person's pace. You may be somebody who has a lot of capacity, and maybe you can do 10 things and they can only do 5. Love isn't the idea to go, hey, I'm going to project that on you, and you better get going, and you better speed it up, and we better get more going in this home, we better get more going in this relationship, because I'm a person who goes and goes and goes. No, that is not love. Love is a decision to choose to run at the other person's pace. And on very practical levels, You know, if they love books and you love conversations, love is a choice to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to get into books. And if they love beach vacations and you love mountain vacations, love is a choice to run at their pace and go, you know what? I love the beach. Love is patient. And think about this, guys. Wasn't this what Jesus Christ did with you and me? I mean, think about his capacity. Jesus was the creator. He was from the very beginning. I mean, his capacity is infinite. I mean, regardless of your IQ and your accomplishments and how much you've done in business and if you've got global enterprises and whatever I mean, all that's fine. But then you look at Jesus and you're like, oh my gosh, in 3 years, he changed the world. I mean, none of us have done that. No person in human history has done. I mean, Jesus is so unique. His capacity is unbelievable. And Jesus didn't go, hey, you know, well, you guys got to figure this out. You know, once you figure out all this stuff, then I'll come. No. And Jesus doesn't push his pace on us. Jesus comes in to the world and meets us where we're at and chooses our pace. Paul's thinking of this, and he goes, oh yeah, he was so patient. Love is patient. And do you know what else love is in terms of patience? Love is a choice to pause rather than push. Love creates the space for thrill and sensuality and intimacy. Love pauses in the big decisions of your relationships, and love pauses in the small decisions. For example, I was thinking about this this week, and I thought to myself, you know, something that, you know, I get kind of pushy with, or I feel this internal push with me, is with Jill and I, is when we go shopping. And specifically when Jill wants to shop for something for her. And so when Jill's like, hey, you know, I need a pair of jeans, and I'm like, okay, you know, let's do this. And when we go to the store, there's something that rises inside of me. I don't know where this comes from, but there is something inside of me that just wants to go, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to go in the store. We need to get that one pair of jeans. We need to execute. We need to drive. We need to go. And then once you get that one pair of jeans, you're going to try it on, and you're questioning me every single time, how do I look? And I'm going to say, you look amazing. And then we're going to go, because we need to go. We need to go, go, go. And everything internally wants to push, 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 push. And I thought about that this week, and I went, why do I do that? Like, where is it I want to go when I leave the store? And I thought this week, nowhere. I have no plans. I just want to go. And that's inside of me, but here's what I know. Here's what I know. Do you know when Jill and I were dating, and she goes, I want to go shopping? Do you know my response to her was like, giddy up. Let's go. Like, I love going with her. And if she's like, hey, I want to try one pair, I'm like, hey, try two, try five. I'll go get some more. And I would sit there and I would watch her like try on pair after pair after pair, and she would come out, how do I look? And I would just sit there and go, wow, that's my girl. I mean, she's amazing. And just that pause created space for thrill to exist. And 2 weeks ago, we went shopping. And guys, I don't get this right all the time, trust me. But 2 weeks ago, we went shopping, and I was thinking of this whole thing. And we were shopping for a pair of jeans. And I remember we went into the store, and she tried one on, and I went, and I said, okay, you want to go, but just pause, because love is a choice to pause instead of push. And I paused, and I got her some jeans, and I'm not kidding you guys. I sat there, and she was trying on several pair of jeans, and I was just watching her, and as she came out, I had that feeling, and it just came over me. I went, wow, that's my wife. She's so beautiful. And I'm just telling you, that's what love does. And I don't get it right every time. But every single one of us can make a choice to be patient. So let me just ask, how are you doing with this? When it comes to your relationships, would you say, hey, you know, I'm pausing, or are you pushing? When it comes to those big decisions, and man, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that, are you pushing that on them? Are you pushing your pace on them? Or if you're in a dating relationship, oh, please pay attention to this. Because if that person you're dating is pushing you to do something when it comes to sensuality you're not comfortable with, if that person you're dating is pushing you to go to that next level in the relationship, we need to go, 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 pay attention to that. Because that is not love. Love is patient. And Paul continues, and he thinks about what Jesus did for us and how he loved us, and he goes, oh, here's something else. He says, love is kind. Love is kind. Now, what's so interesting about kindness, when I think about kindness, oftentimes there's this connection or connotation that kindness and weakness go hand in hand. And I thought about that, and a few weeks ago I was talking to my kids, and Jill and I and the 5 boys, we were all at the dinner table, and I knew what I was going to talk about today, and so I was thinking about, love, kindness, and the whole thing about weakness. And so I tested this, and I said to my 5 boys, we're all sitting there at the dinner table, I said, hey, when you think of a kind person, do you think of strength and power, or do you think of weakness? And all 5 of them collectively said, weakness. And I went, man, I'm a terrible parent. I got a lot to work on, right? But I sat there and I said, there is this connection to that. But here's what I want to reframe for you. If you've ever thought that or, began to go down that path, I want to reframe kindness for you. And here's what I want you to think about. Unkindness is actually weakness. Because when you see weakness, and there's something that comes out of your mouth, or there's a certain action, or your emotional IQ or emotional intelligence doesn't have the capacity to be able to, respond to that weakness, I mean, that's not strength. That's a lack of self-control. If you can't control this, and you can't control actions, and you can't control your emotional IQ, that's not strength. That's weakness. You see, if I had to define kindness, I would say kindness is loaning someone your strength rather than reminding them of their weakness. I mean, love doesn't go around and go, here you did it again. I mean, you're always doing it. Or walks into churches or organizations. And there's a million parts that are always going on. It's like, I'm going to pick on that one, that one, that one, that one. Weakness, 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 weakness. Look at all those gaps. I mean, that's not love. You see, when it comes to kindness, kindness is love's response to weakness. Kindness is this idea to go, hey, I see weakness. And instead of poking a bunch of holes at that and telling everybody all about, her weakness, his weakness, or telling them about it, I'm going to leverage my strength in the midst of their weakness for their benefit. That's love. And guys, isn't that exactly what Jesus Christ did for you and did for me? I mean, Jesus looked at us. And from heaven, he saw our weakness. I mean, every single one of us have missed the mark. Every single one. There's not a single perfect person here or on this planet. And he sees that. And he sees the weakness. And instead of Jesus going, I see all your weakness. You get it all figured out. And then one day I'll come. He doesn't do that. He sees our weakness. He sees our brokenness. He sees our vulnerabilities. And he steps in to our world and offers his perfect life, his strength for our benefit. So you and I could experience forgiveness, peace with God, and eternity, and the life to come. He modeled it, and then he looks at you and me and says, okay, now love as I have loved you. Love is kind. So my question is, what is your go-to response to weakness? When you see weakness on the other side of you, either maybe in an organization, in relationships, in your family, or in your romantic relationship, what's your go-to response with your words? What's your go-to response with your actions? And again, if you're dating, please pay attention to this. Because when someone's dating you, they are on their best behavior. They want to win you, right? And so they are top-notch, but you got to watch their response to weakness. Watch when they watch the TV, when they talk about their family, when they talk about others, when they walk in certain places, are they constantly pointing out weaknesses? Because eventually, they may not in your dating relationship, but eventually they will begin to point out yours. Or think of it this way. People who use kindness as a means to an end are often mean in the end. Love is patient. It doesn't push. Love is kind. It leverages my strengths in the midst of the weakness for their benefit. And then Paul continues, and he goes, you know what else love is? As I think about it, he goes, love does not envy. It does not boast. It's not proud. Well, Paul, practically, what does that mean? What does that look like? Perhaps he would say something like this: love is not a spotlight stealer. That's not what love does. And you may go, what's a spotlight stealer? And I think we've all experienced this. You've all been at that dinner, or maybe that big family gathering with everybody, or maybe a big organizational, dinner, and everybody's around the table, and you see people just one it up and one it up and one it up and stealing the spotlight, and you hear one story, and then somebody shares a better story, and somebody tries to trump that story, and you're like, goodness, I mean, perhaps you're sitting there and somebody says, hey, a couple months ago, I went on a vacation. We went to Florida. I brought my kids and our whole family. We stayed in this really cool condo, but, there's a lot of people in the condo, but, it was awesome. And on the beach, we met Tim Tebow. And everybody around the table is like, oh, that's cool. You know what happened? Oh, here's how the conversation. My kids loved it. He was so cool, all this kind of stuff, right? And then immediately, as that person finishes Tim Tebow, their lips haven't even stopped moving, and then somebody else one-ups them and says, oh, you went on vacation in Florida. Well, let me tell you about my vacation. I went to Maldives, and I'm just telling you, I had that condo that was like built on the water, and we invited all of our friends, and I paid for everything. And we just hung out, and it was awesome. We went on this yacht, like my kids went on this yacht. It was amazing. And then there were celebrities everywhere. In fact, our neighbor that I got to hang out with the whole time, it was The Rock. You guys have heard of The Rock, right? And you're sitting there and you're watching this whole thing, this dynamic play out, and you're going, there is a bunch of spotlight stealing happening everywhere. Just one up, one up. Now listen carefully. When this happens in a romantic relationship, it just creates unbalance. It evaporates the love. Have you ever seen that romantic relationship to where somebody, maybe she starts to tell the story? And then, because maybe there is something that he has that, perhaps is going to steal the spotlight, and it's a really cool story, but all of a sudden he just goes, move out of the way. Let me just stand up, and I know how to tell this story much better. And you watch that, next time you see that, look at her. Watch her body language. Watch the way you can see her feelings exude from her reactions. It just sucks the love out of that. See, that's not love. And love is not a joy robber. When somebody shares an incredible thing, a cool story, I got the promotion, we bought the house, he said yes, she said yes, whatever, we've seen this. People go, oh, yeah, but if you knew what I knew about them, they just got lucky. There's just right time, right, but they're just robbing the joy of that moment. That's not love. So how about you? When you see somebody, perhaps your significant other, in the spotlight, and they're talking about whatever story there is, and even if you have something perhaps that will one up and that is spotlight worthy, what happens inside of you? Do you want to steal that spotlight? Or do you want to rob that joy? Somebody sharing something. Is there something that rises inside of you to go, oh, yeah, but, if you lived with them, if you hung out with them, come on, they just got lucky. Because if there's something that rises inside of you that wants to do that, you've got some work to do. Or think about it this way. Pay close attention to your internal reaction to the success of the people closest to you. So guys, come on. When it comes to your wife or your girlfriend or your significant other, how easy is it for you to brag on them? How easy is it for you to brag on them publicly? Or is there something that rises inside of you that just wants to steal the spotlight? Ladies, when it comes to your husband, your boyfriend, your significant other, how easy is it for you to brag on them publicly? Or is there something that rises inside of you that wants to rob the joy? Because love does not envy, it is not proud, and it does not boast. So, what is love? What is love? Well, Paul begins to answer it. Thinks about the life of Jesus, and Jesus is the personification of love, and if Jesus really is the unique Son of God, the Son of the living God, then this is love. This is our answer. Love is patient. Love doesn't push. Love pauses to create space for thrill, intimacy, and sensuality. Love is kind. When love sees a weakness, it doesn't just point it out, let me tell you, and you're always... No, love says, hey, I see that. Let me leverage my strength in the midst of that weakness for your benefit. And love does not envy, does not boast, it is not proud. It's not a spotlight stealer or a joy robber. Now, there's so much more to say about this because Paul continues, and we're going to pick it up there next week. But for today, as we begin to unpack and answer this question, what is love? Here's what I want you to think about. Here's what I want to leave you with. And this is so important. Honestly, I wish you would like write this down, put it everywhere possible. You'll never forget this for the rest of your life, regardless if you're a Christian or not. Here's the bottom line of today. Listen, love is a choice. And honestly, the choice is yours. You have the power to do something. And if you are feeling in your romantic relationship, gosh, I just don't feel the passion here. You have a choice and you are free and capable to be the passion that you're looking for. If you're sitting there going, man, I'd love some thrill in my relationship to bring balance back to that, you can choose to be the thrill that you're looking for. You can choose to pause. You are capable of this. Love is a choice, and the choice is yours. And if you're going, wow, I'd love to see this spark come back, some sensuality, some balance to come back, to that area, you can choose to be a generous lover. You can choose that. And I love the word lover, because lover is a verb, meaning you do something. The most important letter in the word lover is the R, meaning you can make a choice to be the lover instead of waiting on love. You see, love is a choice. And when we begin to say, I don't feel it, but you know what? I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to trust you, God. I'm going to step into this, and I'm going to begin to choose to love, either with patience or kindness or whatever it may be. It's the ingredients. It's the thing that begins to fuel and bring balance back to the passion triangle. In other words, when we make this choice, this is how you become a person we're looking for. If you're in the dating relationships, you're going, how do I make choices today to prepare myself for the person I'm looking for? Well, it's love. Love is patient. You can do that today. Love is kind. You can do that today. Love is not a spotlight, stealer or joy robber. You can do that today and prepare. Or if you're in a romantic relationship, this is how you become a person we're staying for. That there is a choice you and I can make. The bottom line of today that I hope you never lose sight of is this. Love is a choice, and the choice is yours. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you again for today. Thank you just for this time that we can have these discussions like this. And God, thank you that you preserve the scriptures to point us to what is love, the answer to that. It's a really important question. Father, today for all of us, I know we're at a lot of different spaces in relationships, in life, and the greatest news of all time is you know that. You know our hearts. You know what's going on in our relationships, and you know what it looks like to take what we've talked about today and take a step. So, Father, in only the way that you can, in the most loving way, would you meet us today with what we've heard and give us the insight and the courage and the wisdom to make a choice, to do what you've done for us and to love. In Jesus' name, amen. Guys, thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next week.